Here is the very latest on the Deshaun Watson situation, the story that won't go away. All right, so there's a lot here. Andrew Beaton of the Wall Street Journal reported over the weekend that the NFL is pushing for an indefinite suspension of Deshaun Watson, and they won't accept anything shorter than 1 season at minimum. The NFL's reportedly has zeroed in on 5 cases that the Wall Street Journal says are particularly damning that include, quote, contemporaneous evidence that makes the cases objectively provable, and they're also pushing for the indefinite suspension as flexibility in case any more allegations come up. The NFLPA obviously going to defend Deshaun Watson, and their plan is to use comps and point to other punishments that have been handed down, because this would be unprecedented, but other punishments for owners, players, et cetera, et cetera. The disciplinary hearing is coming up on Tuesday. So that's where we stand on Deshaun Watson, which is code for he and the Cleveland Browns are screwed. That's gonna go ahead and do it for the 2022 season.
That ain't code. That's true. Ain't no code needed. Ain't no Morse code. No passcode. No code.
Reading between the lines.
No.
Nope. Oh, what a disaster.
Nope. Okay, so here's why I have a hard time leading off on this subject today. Because everyone I'm biased, right? Like, I grew up rooting for the Browns. I've pulled for the Browns my entire life. I got drafted there. I experienced kind of what you're seeing right now, like the decision-making really from the top down. And this is an ownership decision. You didn't bring in Deshaun Watson. You didn't trade for him. You didn't sign him to that contract unless you have Jimmy and Dee Haslam, the owners, the majority owners in Cleveland, signing off on this. So, look, I'm biased because of my experience. But this is a prime example of why some organizations are just dumpster fires. And even when it's talented, even when they've made a recent playoff run, or I should say at least won a game in the playoffs, and it looks optimistic, this is why they can't sustain itself. It's because they go make the type of move they did this offseason, obviously not having all the information. Clearly, if there was 4 more pending lawsuits or allegations out there, and I know Deshaun Watson settled the other 20 at this point, but as we talked about all along, that doesn't exclude him from being punished by the NFL. And because of the way the other 4 lawsuits have come out, even since they have, the Browns traded for him, signed him to that deal, he's put himself in this situation where they're going to have to suspend him for a year indefinitely because they don't know. Like, no one has ever handled this sort of situation before in any professional sports league. It is so unique. And yet the Browns, they took the chance to sign this dude to the biggest contract in NFL history, thinking they were good. I don't know, man. I look back and you see a number of organizations that are just going to struggle. And it's hard for me not to feel like this organization's always going to struggle.
It's like one of those moments where it's like we don't even have the resources put into knowing as much about what's going on with Deshaun Watson's situation as the Browns or other teams around the league would have used. You're looking at all these other teams, and the deciding factor was we're not guaranteeing it.
Right.
We're not guaranteeing it.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like you got the one time that the one team that says, well, it's our chance. This is our opportunity. Let's step up to the plate because this is going to give us what we need for the future. Like, to me, I look at it like this. I thought it was somewhat strange as long as this has been kind of lingering and all of the information that continues to surface. I just think it became more and more strange to want to attach your brand to a toxic commodity. It's toxic. And it's like, I know people are like, well, it's innocent until proven guilty, or you feel like he's innocent because he didn't get legal charges or criminal charges, that stuck or anything like that. As you've mentioned the entire time, Q, that does not mean that he is not he didn't do something wrong. It's clear from the evidence that continues to surface that the dude has done some things that are not correct. I just find it hard to believe that you would give a man coming off of all the scenarios. You didn't play for the team last year. You said, I'm leaving. You're disgruntled. Then it turns into all of these cases of women saying that you were inappropriate and amongst other things with them in these massage sessions. And now you force your way into a trade and you end up going to the Browns.
Did the Browns think that he wasn't going to be punished, or did they think that the NFL was going to take this lightly? Like, I mean, just because if you actually go back and think about it, like 22 were there. Like, I mean, these other 4 have taken it to another level, but there were still 22 that were there. And we were talking about this on Friday, Brady, that I wonder if the motivation for him to settle, because we were wondering why now? Why is he settling now? If the motivation for him to settle the 20 of 24 was maybe that they had the initial hearing on what the NFL was proposing as a punishment, and maybe that enticed Deshaun Watson to get as many settled, thinking, okay, if we get all these settled, maybe we're not looking at a 2-year or an indefinite suspension. Maybe that'll help my cause. But it's just the idea that the Browns thought we could just make this move and we could just land this guy, and then everything will work itself out, and we're going to be fine here. If you just go back and think about it, there were 22 cases out there more investigations going on.
And on Friday, I wanted to ask Q, is there any way that the Browns, in some way, shape, form, or manner, based off of if these allegations hold him out from playing, that the Browns are able to recoup any of that guaranteed money?
I don't know if I have the answer to that, only because the people that I've talked to in Cleveland, it was before the additional allegations and lawsuits came out, and I don't know how those factor into it, but my inclination was, and from the people I talked to, that they believe when he signed that deal, they had taken into account, the Cleveland Browns have taken into account everything that he had done up to that point. And they jumped in the boat with him, and they weren't going to claw back any guarantees or anything for anything that was already known, that had already been done. And I would imagine, and this is just me speculating now, that they probably wrote, meaning his agent and his team probably wrote into the contract on behalf of Deshaun Watson that, hey, more of these could come out. But you're not going to pull back any of these guaranteed. When we say guarantee, it's guaranteed. It's only if he does something in this time frame in which he has now become a Brown or he's playing for your team. I believe that is how they've protected those guarantees within that contract. I don't think there's anything right now that the Browns can do to claw back the monies that they have guaranteed to Deshaun Watson at this point. I mean, some people speculated, could they reverse the trade? Reverse the trade?
Yeah.
I mean, the Texans have used one of those draft picks. Watson's been up there practicing. Like, how's that going to work? So, look, the Browns made this bet, and now they have to land it. And the most interesting thing now becomes what role, if any, is Baker going to Mayfield play in all of this? Because we can speculate and act like they could put that toothpaste back in the bottle or back in the tube after probably how he feels like they treated him. But I don't think that's going to happen. I'll put it this way. We know Baker to be more of an emotional guy, and he kind of wears his emotions on his sleeve. Matt Ryan, they call him Matty Ice. Like, he doesn't show his emotions a lot with all this. But when Atlanta was snooping around for Deshaun Watson, he even said, he admitted when he was now up in Indianapolis, he said if they didn't do that, he probably wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So if that's how Matt Ryan acted, I don't know that Baker Mayfield's going to be any different, thinking that I don't want to be any part of this organization for the way they've treated me and how they've handled this whole deal.
I mean, that's pretty damning to put Baker Mayfield. Like, you can say a lot of things about, if you're feeling an opinion about Baker Mayfield as it applies to a lot of different topics, I guess, but as it applies to how it compares to Deshaun Watson, I mean, it makes Baker Mayfield seem like that's just like okay, deal with the growing pains of having Baker Mayfield. Like you got to be having tremendous buyer's remorse right now if you're the Cleveland Browns.
Let me ask you guys this: can you think of? Because I believe this to be true. This is the worst trade/signing in the history of the NFL.
It's definitely the most expensive one.
It sure as hell looks like it right now.
Because the only other comparisons you could make is if you make a deal for somebody or you make a move and an injury pops up, but it's like injury, you can't do anything about it.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I think I said this before, and I limited it to the NFL. Now, I may be ignorant to some other situations in other sports, so if I am, it is what it is, but this might be the worst deal ever done in the history of sports.
I can't think of any other, because all of this was avoidable.
There have been some horrible things that have happened. You know, people have taken other people's lives. There have been some, like, people that have had opportunities that, you know, after, you know, something bad has happened. But this in the moment, just trying to jog my mind, and as we've gone over this through the weeks, this is by far top of mind the worst deal ever done, maybe in sports, in professional sports, period.
Because it's not like signing a player who goes to a team and just falls off a cliff. Like that's just a guy who gets paid and then his career takes a path down nowhereville, and it's like, okay, well, you know, he wasn't what the guy we thought he was, or he got old, and that's the case. All of this was avoidable.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have to make the deal for him and give up what you did, but you did, knowing the 22 lawsuits were out there.
But then you reset the market for every quarterback in the league with a guy that may not even play another game.
It's like all of this is and you burned the bridge with the quarterback who won you a playoff game in Pittsburgh. Like, the whole thing was avoidable. I can't think of a worse trade/signing in the history of the league. And to your point, maybe even in sports.
It might be in sports.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a worse deal ever done in sports.
Let's go pay a guy $230 million guaranteed, who's not going to play for another year after already not playing for a year.
And could be
in all
an
seriousness,
suspension.
Oh, my God.
What do you think that meeting room looks like when everyone's sitting around the table after trading for Watson? What's he been there, like 3 months now?
It's like that Spider-Man meme where everybody's pointing at the other Spider-Man. It's like, you did this.
Oh, my God.
Don't point at me. You did this.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The Brownies, baby.
That's so true. It is the Spider-Man.
I mean, if I was a coach in that organization, I'd have all my S packed up in a box, ready to go. Like, if I'm in the front office,
you're
I got
running.
all my stuff packed up, ready to go. Like,
hey, you're on a month-to-month rental. You don't unpack.
No.
You rent everything you can, and you say, well, the day's eventually going to come.
Wherever my home is in the off season, or when I didn't have this job, that's where wife and kids are going to be. Everybody's going to be where we really live. Like, nah, don't even come here. Like, I'm going to be in a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm going to rent that joint month-to-month lease. Like, we ready to go.
It's just unbelievable.
Ready to rock.